Through the needs of childhood into maturity and then onwards into old age, Wiveliscombe provides a sustaining continuity. Adjectives and algebra, beer and bread, fabrics and threads, needles and nails, plaster and paint, and people.
Right, what's nice about Wiveliscombe? It's just a pretty place and there's wonderful people. Got a great swimming pool, a fantastic band. You ought to listen to the band all the time. The band's great.
And the school. It's a wonderful school and it serves the community well.
I've lived here for 8 years and it's like old and it's not really modern, so it's pretty and I just like it.
The job to come and work in Somerset, I was ecstatic and decided rather than drive straight home I'd look at the map and find somewhere that sounded interesting to go and have a first taste of Somerset. So I drove to Wiveliscombe and bonded with it from the first moment I got here.
Why do I live in Wiveliscombe and why do I like it? Because it's a working person's town. There's a sense that life keeps on growing and adding to Wiveliscombe. It has such interesting historical features and the countryside round it's absolutely gorgeous and I can't believe I live here.
Mid-December, and Wiveliscombe slumbers in the early light of day, touched by the stillness of winter's wizard. A quiet world of muffling snow, desultory birds and skeletal trees. Deep into England's West Country, and built of local sandstone hewn from the Vale of Taunton Dean, Wiveliscombe, a place of history and legend, founded upon bishops, brewers and beasts, has been home to Somerset people for hundreds of years. Slowly, and then with quickening pace, daily life resumes a tireless routine, whilst thoughts are turned to Christmas.
Hey, do you think you make some real prints?
If the local Edwardian writer, the Reverend Frederick Hancock, is to be believed, people called the town Wiveliscombe, after Wiffler, a wealthy and influential Saxon. This is a peaceable place that over time has come to be known simply as Wilscombe or Wivy. Homes of brick, stone and slate intimate a place of community and self-reliance historically held together by faith and a trust in God. For today's children, the church is only part of the Yuletide magic. As daylight becomes enshrouded by evening darkness, young faces become bright with seasonal wonderment. Those who've seen many Christmases release themselves from the stresses of the day as the music begins. Behind the innocence of the very young and the dances of the wiser lies a reality that's at the heart of rural life. The face of ancient Somerset from a time when tribal people built their earthwork that's Castle Hill and founded their farms. Somerset County archaeologist Bob Croft voices his thoughts on early times.
This area, once you get across the River Parrett, Bridgewater, Taunton, the Parretts, this side of the Parrett, west of the Parrett, you're really into a more ancient landscape. The settlement pattern's different and you know, you've got the more prehistoric elements really of the countryside which existed across here. The settlement pattern of villages, farms, that scattered pattern is still pretty evident, the pattern you see today.
Joe Hawkins, a Wiveliscombe farm worker for many years and now in his 90s, remembers back to a day planting potatoes in 1946 that unearthed a Roman legacy of over 1,000 coins.
Plough had gone into a big stone, and the point of ploughing, they caught the stone and he lifted the plough right into the ground.
The coins were buried up there in a pot, buried maybe, you know, a foot or two down.
He literally lifted the plough out the ground, if you know what I mean. And the Lord built us this canister there with just these Roman coins in it. And, well, he caught them and he took them in the Taunton Museum, I think, now.
The landscape has little changed since Joe Hawkins' discovery. As it was with the Saxons, so it is now. The town, relieved of winter's yoke, becomes a myriad of delicate petals and blossom. But even in a place as pleasant as Wiveliscombe, people have met with change, anxiety and fear, and catastrophically for some, epidemic disaster. Graham Owen, the parish priest, knows his responsibility of providing spiritual support and consoling words to people in need of hope.
Of course, the farming community has been under enormous strain with the appearance of foot and mouth right here in the centre of Wiveliscombe, and the pain and bereavement of that continues long after the newspaper headlines have died down. The community life, you know, when there's a big event in the community, whether it's foot and mouth, whether it's the death of Diana, whatever it is, people look to the church for a centre, focus, to direct their thoughts, for a place to be, to look for the presence of God in what's going on. And yeah, it's a tremendous privilege just to be a part of that, really.
Some local farmers escaped the foot and mouth epidemic of 2001. Harry Farrington is an arable farmer who took over the family business from his father.
I've lived in Wiveliscombe now for nearly 40 years, and there have been a lot of changes in the farming scene over that period. Tornavale was traditionally a dairy area, but has moved into more mixed arable and stock farms now. Now this is miscanthus. This is often called elephant grass because of its height. This is a 2-year-old crop which was planted from rhizome, and it's a hardy tropical grass really, which is more used to tropical countries, but it does grow well in this moist southwestern area.
Economically, the countryside has never been able to sustain everyone and forced many to seek the crutch of Christian charity. Behind a tangle of growth, a bricked doorway in the churchyard wall abutting Rotten Row betrays where the town poorhouse once stood. In the 1720s, Daniel Defoe, the literary journeyman and writer of the famous novel Robinson Crusoe, rode through these parts, noting that there were so many beggars that he had difficulty in avoiding them from under his horse's heels. By this time, Wiveliscombe had, however, established some industry. The town was making its name by cloth making of dubious prestige. Penistone cloth was infamous during the 18th century. Cheaply weaved and blue-dyed Penistone became the adopted clothing of slaves on the Empire's colonial plantations. The Reverend Ban Forsyth, a retired missionary, recalls Wiveliscombe's influence in Brazil.
I believe that there is a link between this home in which I now am here in Wiveliscombe and a house which I occupied in Brazil. Brazil imported on a very, very large scale British cloths woven here in the West Country. Surely, Wiveliscombe, Fox Brothers, Wiveliscombe, would export to Brazil this penny stone cloth.
Like Ban Forsyth, many people choose to live in Wiveliscombe. Other people had to come to the town. The early morning rush is a reminder of the congestion when the main road from London to Barnstaple passed this narrow gap between the aptly named London House and the White Hart Hotel. Postman Richard Disney remembers how it used to be before the bypass.
One of the most notorious pieces of Wiveliscombe is on the corner by Jones's Garage, which is still about as narrow now as it was in those days. If a coach was coming down from the Devon direction and it met a car and caravan on that corner, everything just stopped, and the Jones's mechanics used to have to come and unhook the caravan, push it into the car park, and then let the bus go through after reversing the car back off the road.
The memory remains strong in the mind of town cobbler Jim Adams as he continues to work in semi-retirement from his home in Spring Gardens.
Last week in July, the beginning of August, the holiday period, I would always get rid of all my old stock, rubbish, if you like to call it so, with holiday makers. Regular people going through, they know they'd get at the top of Double's Elbow, run down, try the shoes on, and wait outside, and the car would come and pick them up and they'd go on. Now, there would be up to 3-4 of us in shop serving, roughly from 10 o'clock onwards, to Londoners, Birmingham people. People are still calls in to see me from time to time, even now. It goes through. And that was a laugh, because I could go up my kitchen window and more or less there was a system of signalling. But I've had a life. I was put in shoe repairing when I was at school because I was disabled. The government paid for me to learn. When I've done a 5-year apprenticeship, I was told I wasn't wanted. I wasn't capable of earning a living. In temper, I started on my own. I survived for 44 years. I'm still surviving. Mine is a struggle. I've had ups and downs. I suppose the last 10 years of life was going down rather than going up, because I used to employ 2 men one time. Now, I don't think one man would make a living in shoe repairing with me.
In a past age that's still living memory, one way to avoid the congestion was by rail. Now, with the railway gone, the only sound is that of birdsong, stimulating Wiveliscombe's lush summer landscape. For Wiveliscombe's children, summer's a time of play and for the making of the happy memories of childhood. With the school fete, everyone gets the chance to let their hair down for the cause of money raising. Busy Bee's playgroup is a hive of preschool activity. The playground at the primary school resounds to the riotous screams and the boisterous shouts that's lunch break. Whilst in the form room, final preparations are made for the end-of-year school play. Accompanied by the piano, young voices make the school hall reverberate in song. Although times and fashion may change, the ways of children remain constant. It's not all good. Naughtiness and recklessness are all part of growing up. Tony Holstead, the primary school's current headmaster, delves into the past as he leafs through the school discipline book used by Wiveliscombe's Victorian and Edwardian teachers.
In the good old days, children weren't particularly well behaved. I mean, if you actually read the punishment books, it's fascinating. Children were caned for indifference, sulkiness, interfering with a horse is my own particular favourite. I mean, all these things that the children were actually caned for, they had between 6 and 1 strokes, I think. But nowadays, when children are badly behaved, of course, we talk to them very nicely and speak with parents and explain that this isn't acceptable, whereas in the olden days they were beaten senseless. So it's a slightly different way of approaching things, but I'm not quite sure which is the best.
The passing years have seen an evolution rather than a revolution in the town's schools. For former schoolmasters, things definitely have changed. Jack Vickery, a teacher at Kingsmead, recalls a time when rural science was on the curriculum.
We had a cow there called Martha that they would take a week's duty and go out in the morning and milk the cow, and then the milk was then used in the staff room and the children took the surplus milk home. Of course, domestic science made use of the milk again with cream, making clotted cream in those days. But I don't know, I can't see that rural science had to cease in those days of 1973.
It's a different world today. The Leavers' Ball at Kingsmead. Another generation has its final fling before preparing itself to face the wider world. These are the images of teenage, a time when thirst, though quenched by fizzy pop, sees the young drawn to more intoxicating refreshment. Brewing has in recent years replaced cloth in making the town's reputation. Today, Cotley Brewery enjoys modern purpose-built premises. Cotley's brewery is a stone's throw away from where the old Hancock's brewery had its site. Freddie Hancock was involved in the running of the old brewery.
And I believe that Hancock's went into brewing when they financed some woman who had a pub in Wiveliscombe to build a brewery. And I think that she couldn't make it or something, and they foreclosed on her and had to take over the half-built brewery and finish it off. The early days, they certainly used to deliver by horse as far as Porlock back in the day, and they went as far as the top of Pittsford Hill with 3 horses, and the third horse, which was on in front, was unhooked and taken back to the brewery again, and that horse was known as a cock horse in those days. During the war, the brewery ran a pig club. I don't know, they were fed, I think people used to collect their own swill and feed that to the pigs. And that was run by one called Dick Newick, who was foreman of the cider factory. And incidentally, he was a great Freemason. And the pigs were killed in the car wash at the bottom of the cider factory. About 1913, Lloyd George brought in a budget which taxed beer very highly, and sales dwindled away. So they then built a cider factory, started making cider at the factory, at the brewery, the other side of the road.
When the cider factory caught fire, it left an indelible memory on the minds of locals.
QI understood there are 2 firefighters not on drill tonight, but they should not respond. Lima 108, over.
Firemen are not the only people who work hard. Brewing continues here with Exmoor Ales and of course Cotley Brewery. The Bear pub in North Street was the adjacent watering hole for farmers coming to the town's market. Photographs show how it used to be. Although some birds are enjoyed by the drinker, other birds can be an irritation to the gardener. Methods of discouragement can be ingenious. Some birds, however, go too far, as Tony Holstead explains.
Easter holidays, last day, phone call at home. Your boiler's not working, which sounded fair enough because that often happens. Jackdaws had moved into the chimneys. No problem, came to school, told the children they thought this was wonderful. I pointed out that we couldn't use the heating system. They were perfectly happy. They had a vote, said, OK, we'll leave the birds. Very laudable, very pleased with that, but unfortunately the weather changed. The following day it was freezing, we had no heating. Consequently I rushed out and bought 15 fan heaters, plugged them all in. The school warmed up, but unfortunately the lighting system gave out because we didn't have sufficient power. Following that, we then discovered that the jackdaws were in for 6 weeks. 2 days later, rats appeared on the scene, and just as we were sorting the rats out with the pest control officer, so squirrels were spotted moving out of the dining room roof, which was quite fun. It transpired that there were 8 squirrels in the dining room roof, and they'd obviously decided that this was the place to be, because word got out then that we had starlings in there as well. So in the space of 4 days we've gone from jackdaws, no heating, squirrels, rats and birds. So it was probably the most interesting week of my career.
Birds are not the only things that fly in Withy. However eccentric the village cat population may be that lives in and out of other people's homes, nothing compares to a feline ancestor now honoured as the motif of the Wiveliscombe messenger. Thomas Bessie, a winged cat, was roaming the town streets in the 1890s. He became nationally famous. Alison McKinley, owner of the Carousel Pig, has a prized photograph.
Well, a friend came into the shop and handed me a copy of a newspaper cutting from the Observer newspaper showing a photograph of the supposed cat Thomas as he was in the late 1800s. Quite a large cat, quite a large tabby, fluffy cat, which appeared to have wings protruding from his shoulder blades.
It wasn't just cats that took to the air in Wiveliscombe. Dragons also flew. A wyvern, a winged dragon, was widely reported to have been seen as recently as the mid-19th century, flying over the newly rebuilt Church of St Andrews. Church warden Dixon Luxton is anecdotal of past services.
Even in my lifetime, I can remember some very, very interesting things. For instance, I can remember a church warden, a very respected and revered church warden, who was never very happy to sit through sermons. And he would not infrequently, during the sermon, disappear to the north porch and sit out in the north porch, light his pipe and smoke, and he had to be fetched in when it was time for the hymn to come and collect the collection.
For those people who proffer a belief in God, life's journey can end in the churchyard. Summer departs to a finale of music, food-stuffed hampers and nostalgic frippery within a sea of candlelight. In the allotments, bonfire smoke drifts upwards in the twilight stillness of the foreshortening days. No gardener's blaze, though, matches that which celebrates November the 5th. In 1953, at the United Nations Organization in New York, and in answer to a question over the town's war bunker built on Oakhampton Manor, Britain's representative, Sir Gladwin Jebb, stated that he'd never heard of Wiveliscombe. A place where you can still buy pots of paint, pins, wooden puffins, pistols, paracetamols, pork chops and parsnips from independent shopkeepers within the distance of a few yards. The voices, some now of disembodied memory, evoke a rural evolution. They hint at something rare amidst a world of social change and the modernity of rampant technologies. The year has come full circle.
Go on, Gareth.
Wiveliscombe is a town with a rich heritage, and it remains a place of work, forever attracting newcomers and their families who seek a fulfilled quality of rural life, a quality that is withy.
No.